The U.S. Supreme Court is once again stepping into the heart of America's gun rights debate, a topic that has long divided the nation and shaped its laws. This time, the justices are preparing to hear arguments that could have far-reaching consequences for how the Second Amendment is interpreted and enforced across the country. At the center of this legal battle is a controversial Hawaii law, which places strict limits on who can carry firearms in public. The Supreme Court's decision to review this law signals a willingness to revisit and possibly redefine the boundaries of gun rights in America, potentially reshaping the legal landscape for years to come. This new case comes on the heels of the landmark 2022 Bruin decision, where the court affirmed that Americans have a constitutional right to carry firearms in public for self-defense. That ruling was seen as a major victory for gun rights advocates, but it also left many questions unanswered about how far states can go in regulating guns. Now, the court's review of Hawaii's law will provide much-needed clarity on the extent to which states can impose restrictions. For gun owners and legal experts alike, this is a critical moment that could set new precedents and influence future legislation nationwide. Many gun owners see this as a unique opportunity to challenge what they view as overly restrictive state laws. They hope the Supreme Court will strengthen protections for individual rights and limit the power of states to impose broad regulations on carrying firearms. On the other hand, there are those who feel increasingly frustrated by the ongoing legal battles and the uncertainty they create. For communities affected by gun violence, the stakes are high, and the debate often feels deeply personal and emotional. The outcome of this case will test whether the right to bear arms is a practical reality for all Americans, or if it remains a theoretical promise subject to interpretation. Millions of citizens from urban centers to rural towns are watching closely, knowing that the court's decision will impact their daily lives and sense of security. As the nation holds its breath, the Supreme Court's ruling is poised to become a pivotal moment in the ongoing saga of gun rights in America, one that will echo through courtrooms, legislatures, and communities for generations to come. At the heart of this Supreme Court case is Hawaii's 2023 law, a response to the Bruin decision. Hawaii's law broadly defines sensitive places where guns are banned, including parks, beaches, and restaurants. It also presumes private properties open to the public are gun-free unless owners give explicit permission. This flips the traditional standard, making it difficult for licensed gun owners to carry firearms. Critics argue it creates a legal minefield, while Hawaii defends it as necessary for public safety. The Supreme Court must decide if the right to carry a firearm overrides property owners' rights. This case will resolve whether states can legislate such restrictions. Gun owners argue Hawaii's law makes the right to carry a firearm illusory, as it bans guns in most public places. A typical day for a licensed gun owner involves leaving their firearm behind due to extensive restrictions. Critics see this as a deliberate attempt to circumvent the Bruin ruling, limiting self-defense to the least dangerous places. The law forces gun owners to disarm in public spaces where threats are real, undermining the purpose of carrying for protection. This legal battle questions whether states can effectively nullify a constitutional right through excessive regulation. The Supreme Court's decision will address this fundamental disagreement. The debate over gun laws pits Second Amendment advocates against gun control supporters. Gun rights advocates argue Hawaii's law infringes on the constitutional right to self-defense. They claim there's no historical precedent for such broad bans on firearms in public places. Gun control supporters prioritize public safety, arguing states can regulate where guns are carried. They believe allowing property owners to decide on firearms is a victory for property rights. The Supreme Court's ruling will balance individual liberty with collective security. This decision will shape the future of gun regulation in America. The legal fight over gun-carrying rights extends beyond Hawaii, with similar laws in states like New Jersey and New York. These states enacted laws limiting gun carrying in response to the Bruin decision, leading to parallel legal battles. A notable case in New Jersey upheld a law similar to Hawaii's, creating a circuit split. This split increases the likelihood of Supreme Court intervention to resolve the disagreement. The outcome of the Hawaii case will influence these parallel battles and set a nationwide precedent. The Supreme Court's decision will have significant implications for gun laws across the country. This case highlights the ongoing national conflict over Second Amendment rights. The journey of Hawaii's gun law to the Supreme Court is a story marked by legal twists and turns, with lower courts playing a pivotal role in shaping the debate. The process began when Hawaii enacted a law that imposed strict regulations on carrying firearms in public spaces, sparking immediate legal challenges from both gun rights advocates and property owners. As the case wound its way through the federal court system, it became clear that the outcome would have far-reaching implications, not just for Hawaii, but for the entire nation. At first, a federal judge blocked the law, citing concerns that it might infringe on constitutional rights. This initial ruling was seen as a win for those who argued that the law was too restrictive and could set a dangerous precedent for gun ownership across the country. However, the legal battle was far from over. The case was quickly appealed and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals took up the matter. After careful consideration, the appellate judges reversed the lower court's decision, upholding Hawaii's law. They reasoned that the law was designed to protect the rights of property owners, allowing them to decide whether firearms could be carried on their premises. This ruling gave the state the authority to enforce a default ban on firearms in most public places, unless explicitly allowed by property owners. For gun control advocates, the Ninth Circuit's decision was a significant victory. It not only validated Hawaii's approach, but also offered a potential blueprint for other states seeking to implement similar restrictions. The ruling energized supporters, who saw it as a step forward in the ongoing effort to reduce gun violence and promote public safety. On the other hand, gun rights supporters were deeply concerned. They argued that the Ninth Circuit had misinterpreted the Supreme Court's earlier Bruin decision, which emphasized the importance of self-defense and the right to bear arms. Critics claimed that prioritizing property rights over individual self-defense could undermine the core protections of the Second Amendment, setting a troubling precedent for future cases. With such high stakes and passionate arguments on both sides, the Supreme Court's decision to hear the case signaled its intent to clarify these complex legal questions. The justices recognized that their ruling would not only resolve the dispute in Hawaii, but also shape the national conversation on gun rights and property rights for years to come. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's ruling will address the delicate balance between protecting property owners' interests and upholding Second Amendment rights, setting a precedent that could influence future legislation and court decisions across the country. The Supreme Court's ruling in the Hawaii case will impact gun laws nationwide, especially in states with similar restrictions. Striking down Hawaii's law could invalidate similar laws in New Jersey, New York, and California. This would clarify the definition of sensitive places and the rules for carrying on private property. Upholding the law would empower states to enact restrictive regulations, creating a divided landscape. The decision will shape the future of Second Amendment jurisprudence and influence other firearm regulations. The ruling will determine whether the court enforces its precedent or allows states more regulatory leeway. The outcome will have lasting effects on gun rights and public safety debates. As the Supreme Court prepares to hear the pivotal Hawaii case, the eyes of the nation turn to Washington, D.C. This case is more than just a legal battle. It's a moment that could reshape the landscape of gun rights and regulations across the United States for years to come. The future of U.S. gun laws truly hangs in the balance, with both sides of the debate anxiously awaiting the court's decision. The outcome could set a precedent that will influence how states interpret and enforce the Second Amendment. If the justices rule against Hawaii, it could open the door for legal challenges to similar restrictive gun laws in other states, potentially expanding the rights of individuals to carry firearms in public. This would mark a significant shift, especially in states with strict permitting processes or bans on concealed carry. On the other hand, if the court upholds Hawaii's law, it would reinforce the authority of states to enact and maintain more restrictive measures on gun ownership and carrying. Such a decision would be seen as a validation of local government's power to regulate firearms in the interest of public safety. Law enforcement agencies and public officials would likely feel emboldened to enforce and even expand these regulations, knowing they have the Supreme Court's backing. State legislatures across the country might be encouraged to introduce new bills or strengthen existing laws, aiming to address gun violence and public safety concerns in their communities. No matter which way the decision goes, it will almost certainly deepen the divide between states with differing philosophies on gun policy. Some states may move to loosen restrictions, while others double down on control, creating an even more fragmented national landscape. For everyday Americans, this means that their rights and responsibilities regarding firearms could vary dramatically depending on where they live. Communities will continue to debate and interpret these laws, often reflecting local values and concerns. Regardless of the outcome, the debate over firearms is far from over. It will continue to play out in courtrooms, legislative chambers, and public forums across the country, as advocates on both sides push for their vision of safety and freedom. Ultimately, the American people will have their say. Not just through the courts, but also at the ballot box where future elections could shape the direction of gun policy for generations. This Supreme Court ruling will become a defining chapter in the ongoing story of America's relationship with the Second Amendment, reflecting the nation's evolving views on liberty, security, and individual rights. As the country awaits the court's decision, one thing is certain: the conversation about guns in America is far from settled, and the next chapter is about to be written.